Podcast. Jenna Moreland. Good morning, Jenna.
Hi.
And Trey Lopashinsky wandered over from the newsroom. Trey, good morning.
Well, howdy, Dub.
Thanks so much for both of you for being here. It's just about 1 year since this little podcast got started, eh, Jenna?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. What a wild year this has been.
Why don't you tell us a bit about kind of where this podcast came from, why it started, what got you involved in it?
Actually, it kind of got formed in a meeting with Steve Troyer of Troyer Ventures.
Yeah.
We were just kind of talking about different ideas, and this is something that was important to both of us. And so what we wanted to do was interview leaders of Treaty 8 territory and some not so well-known leaders as well. And now we're coming up on a year. So it's been crazy, but also really, really rewarding.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's kind of, as I understand it, was sort of started to highlight Indigenous voices really in our region, wasn't it, Trey?
Yeah, no, exactly. And, it's not just leaders at this point. And I think that was originally what we started with Gary Oker, councillor of Doig River First Nations, being our first guest, and had some other leaders from there. But it's also, just having members of the communities, whether it be Doig River First Nation, Blueberry River First Nation, Indigenous communities in general, and just Indigenous members. And we're talking culture and everything going on. We want to put everything out there to the public and try and share those stories so that, everyone knows what's going on in the Northeast.
You've had, I could be wrong about this, but about 12 episodes or so far, 10 or 12 since it kind of started. Tell us a bit, Trey, about some of the things, some of the highlights you've had so far in the kind of the first season of this show.
Well, I think the big moment for the Jenna, and I almost said my wife's name, is the Healing the Hoop.
Yeah.
The conference that was put on. Jenna and myself did a 2-part podcast. We got to speak with people that, without the podcast or the conference, we probably would have never spoke to in our lives.
Yeah, all the keynote speakers we spoke with, which was...
Because there were some keynote speakers that traveled from Ontario, from the States, Keith Secola.
Yeah.
Coming up from the States,
from Arizona,
and we also got special moments where even after the conference we got to sit in a circle and watch them jam, just singing random music and just jamming, and it was really special. A lot of cool moments, a lot of connections were built, and I honestly think at that point the podcast for us, we just got way more comfortable. It's it was a little, before then it was new. We were finding our footing, and then Healing the Hoop happened, and we met all these relationships and heard all these good things about the podcast from people who were listening. And then it just felt we were good. We kind of found our footing in what we were doing. And also Jen and I are on our own, spiritual journeys, and that kind of Healing the Hoop helped us there on a personal level as well.
Yeah, we're both Métis, and I actually at Healing the Hoop did a blanket ceremony, which was kind of like a welcoming into the Indigenous culture. And it really that's part of what I think made me so much more comfortable. And yeah, we solidified a lot of relationships, a lot of local ones and not so local ones. And I met George there, so.
Wonderful. Well, Jenna, I mean, looking forward now, we've got a new episode coming out, I believe, this Monday. Can you tell us a bit about what that's going to be?
So we actually traveled out to the Doig, and so we actually spent most of the day there, and Trey has never been out there before, so we got to walk around and see all of the beautiful structures that they have up now, including the Passive House and the kind of, what is it, arbor? Is it called the arbor? Yeah,
the tea arbor.
The tea dance arbor. It's so beautiful in there. But yeah.
Yeah, and we also interviewed Chief Trevor McConaughey and talked to him about, there's so much going on at Doig currently, but there's so much growth that's happened quickly. And we were very curious about that. So that's kind of what we highlight on the episode coming up this Monday. But the big thing is we haven't been able to talk with the chief yet. So we just talked to him about everything. And
Yeah.
most episodes that we've done, you'll probably hear that guest again because we only have an hour episode. And honestly, the stories that the people we've talked to have need hours and hours.
We just scratched the surface.
Yeah. And then there's so many more guests that we have lined up, new guests, where it's going to be the same thing. So it's very interesting, and I feel like moving into the second year, we're moving into a new phase of Before the Peace. And, Jenna and I have some really cool ideas that we want to implement, and it's I think this next year is going to be pretty awesome for the podcast. So if anyone hasn't given it a listen yet, please do. And if you have any feedback, make sure you reach out to us.
Excellent. All right. Well, there is lots of ways to find and listen to this podcast. So, Trey, if you don't mind, tell us where we can find and listen to it.
Well, the easiest way, I would say, just for self-promotion, is heading to energeticcity.ca/Before the Peace. There's also a separate podcast page, energeticcity.ca/podcasts. Also, anywhere where you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple. Is there
Google.
anything else? Yeah, I don't. not a
And
Google
our social
person.
media, we now have Instagram and Twitter. So on Twitter, we are at Before the Peace _, and on Instagram, we are at Before the Peace. So we would love you guys to follow us and give us some feedback.
Yes, Jenna's been working very hard on the social media side, sharing stuff. So please go give us a follow there.
I have a picture of Trey in the bathrooms out of the Doig, the kids' bathrooms. I'll be sharing that on social media soon.
Big Trey in small spaces.
Yeah.
It's the smallest toilet I've ever seen.
All right, again, energeticcity.ca/Before the Peace to check out all the previous episodes and the new one coming out this Monday of this excellent locally produced podcast highlighting Indigenous voices in the North Peace. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here.
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks, Deb.